Friends, welcome to Mysterious Stories. Today, we bring you a genuinely fascinating and thought-provoking story from the world of art and money, the true story of J.S.G. Boggs, an American artist whose work blurred the distinction between finance and creativity. This is more than just an art tale, it's about challenging the structures we take for granted and rethinking what it means to be valuable. The year was 1984 and the location was Chicago, Illinois, in the United States. A man named J.S.G. Boggs entered a modest restaurant and seated. Like everyone else, he ordered a cup of coffee and a donut. When he finished, the bill arrived, a small sum of 90 cents. But what followed was no ordinary transaction. Boggs reached into his pocket, pulled out a white napkin, and handed it to the waitress. He had drawn, by hand, an astonishingly realistic $1 banknote. The waitress was amazed by how realistic and lifelike the drawing was. For a moment, she forgot it wasn't actual money. Amused and intrigued, she accepted the napkin as payment. In fact, she was so impressed that she returned 10 cents in change, as if it had been a genuine dollar. Boggs' life changed dramatically at this point. An idea occurred to him, which would lead to one of the most controversial and compelling careers in modern art: the creation of Boggs Notes, JSG. Boggs believed he had discovered something powerful. His art was more than just painting, it was about challenging the concept of what gives money its value. He began creating increasingly realistic reproductions of currency, using different denominations of US dollars, British pounds, and Australian dollars, but always only one side of the bill. The opposite side remained blank, indicating that it was not a counterfeit, but rather a work of art. Boggs never sold his drawings for money, instead, he provided them through direct trades. If he drew a $20 bill, he'd stroll into a store and exchange it for $20 in products or services. However, he made it clear to the merchant that it was not real currency. He would explain, "I am not giving you money, I am giving you art. It just happens to resemble money." Surprisingly, numerous merchants accepted it. Why? Because the work was so wonderful and unusual, they hoped it might one day be worth more than the object they were selling. And they were correct. Artwork that became valuable. Boggs' hand-drawn notes, known as Boggs bills or Boggs notes, immediately drew interest from art collectors, critics, and institutions. His work was not only well executed, but it also raised important philosophical problems about trust, value, capitalism, and perception. Some of his notes wound up at significant institutions like the Art Institute of Chicago, the British Museum, and the Smithsonian Institution. One of his $100 bills was apparently sold for $420,000, an incredible sum, especially given that it was never legal money to begin with. Legal problems around the world. However, not everyone admired Boggs' art. Governments and law enforcement organizations began to consider him as a threat, potentially pushing counterfeit banknotes disguised as artwork. Boggs was displaying his art in London in 1986 when 3 Scotland Yard detectives entered the gallery and detained him under the UK's Forgery and Counterfeiting Act. Despite his defense that the notes were art and not intended to deceive, he faced charges with a maximum penalty of 40 years in jail. Fortunately, the court decided in Boggs' favor. His defense attorney successfully argued that no reasonable person would mistake a one-sided sketch for actual money. The jury concurred, and Boggs was acquitted. However, the legal issues did not end there. Boggs was arrested again in Australia in 1989, this time for sketching and bartering Australian currency as art. The Australian government accused him of producing counterfeit cash. Boggs took the matter to court again, and he won. The court not only dismissed the case, but also ordered the Australian government to give him $20,000 as compensation for unlawful arrest. Back in the United States, Boggs remained under surveillance by authorities. Between 1990 and 1992, the United States Secret Service raided his residence 3 times, suspecting him of producing counterfeit banknotes. They took almost 1,300 pieces of his artwork. Despite the scrutiny, Boggs was never charged with any crime in the United States. A life dedicated to artistic rebellion. JSG. Boggs passed away in 2017, yet his legacy continues. His work is on display in galleries and museums around the world, and he is regarded as an artist who dared to question one of society's most holy institutions, money. Boggs did not simply sketch cash. He redefined it. Through his efforts, he challenged people to address uncomfortable questions like, what makes money valuable? Is it the paper on which it is printed, the authority that supports it, or societal consensus? Inspired imitators. Boggs' work continues to inspire artists even today. In China, a young artist named Jian Long has acquired popularity in recent years for his hyper-realistic, hand-drawn depictions of dollars, pounds, and even World Cup tickets. Like Boggs, he only drew one side and avoided selling the artwork for money. Even so, cops invaded his residence on suspicion of falsification. Jian later revealed that he was influenced by the film Project Gutenberg, which also dealt with counterfeit money. Final thoughts. JSG. Boggs was not a counterfeiter. He was a philosopher with a pencil, challenging us to reconsider the systems we live by. Through his art, he reminded the world that worth is more than just money. It is about creativity, intention, and significance. Thanks for viewing Reality Stories. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe, and follow us on Instagram. The link is in the description below. Until next time, remain intrigued.